footage there from the funeral of the Pope's singer, Shane McGowan there. That has been going on for a little while now, and I've got to say, I've been glued to it. It's been one of the best celebrations of life that I personally think I've ever seen. What a fantastic send-off that was. And I'll be showing you a real highlight, if you can even call that, as part of a funeral. But I can tell you, if I had a send-off half as good of that, what an absolute privilege it would be. And I'll bring you, as I said, one of those key moments from that service before the end of the programme. But for now, I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. And we have got a lot to get through over the next hour, starting with the fact that, of course, there is another divide hitting the Tory party this time. Believe it or not, yes, you did hear this right, it centres around a tweet. Yes, a tweet. Can Rishi Sunak unite his party, or is indeed that just wishful thinking? And let's cross to the Ukraine war, because an aid package worth around $61 billion has currently been blocked over in the States. Many are saying this is basically a Christmas gift for Putin. So what do you think? Should the UK step up, help out and pay even more? And get this, a university has said it will no longer have the national anthem as part of its graduation ceremonies because apparently it's old-fashioned and, get this, offensive to some. Dear me, what on earth do you make to that? And let me ask you this, how forgiving are you? Of course, the Christmas season is indeed upon us, but many will be separated from friends and family because of rifts from years gone by. Do you forgive, forget and move on, or not? Yes, indeed. I've got all of that to come before 7 o'clock. But before we get stuck into the debate, let's cross live for tonight's latest headlines.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Downing Street has rejected claims MPs were misled over the cost of the Rwanda scheme. That's after it emerged the asylum plan has reached £240 million before any flights have taken off. Ministers expect a further £50 million will be spent in the coming year. Rishi Sunak, who's facing division within his party over the policy, is hoping to rush emergency legislation through Parliament, with the first vote on Tuesday. A man has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 20 years for stabbing 2 police officers in central London.
Not from Great Wimble Street. Stay where you are. Get back.
The Met Police has now released body cam footage of the attack. Mohammed Rahman stabbed PC Joseph Gerard in the neck and chest and PC Alana Mulhall in the arm after a police pursuit in September last year. The 25-year-old was convicted of attempted murder and grievous bodily harm. A teenager has been arrested on suspicion of murdering a woman who was shot dead in East London. 42-year-old Leanne Gordon was killed in Hackney on Tuesday evening. She was one of 3 people found with gunshot wounds. A 20-year-old man and a 16-year-old boy were taken to hospital. Prince Harry has lost a legal challenge in a libel claim against the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. It means the case must go to trial. The Duke of Sussex is suing Associated Newspapers Limited over an article about his legal challenge against the Home Office following changes to his security arrangements. His lawyers say the story was an attack on his integrity and would undermine his charity work. Associated Newspapers Limited argues it expressed honest opinion and caused no serious harm to Prince Harry's reputation. A blast that damaged a ULEZ camera in south-east London has been described as grotesquely irresponsible by the London Mayor's office. Counter-terror police are leading an investigation into the incident, which happened in Sidcup on Wednesday night. While it's not being treated as terrorism, the explosion is believed to have been a deliberate act. The decision to expand the ultra-low emission zone in the capital has led to a surge in vandalism. A gender reform ruling has been described as a dark day for devolution by Scotland's First Minister. Scotland's highest civil court found the government acted lawfully by blocking the controversial bill. The legislation, which makes it easier for people to change their legally recognised sex, received cross-party support in Holyrood. Humza Yousaf says the judgment confirms that devolution is fundamentally flawed. MSP Rachel Hamilton believes the court's ruling is right.
Really concerning bit of legislation, but also the main reason that we didn't vote for this legislation was that it would have had an impact on the protection of women and girls. And we know that a self-ID system subsequently did have an impact because Isla Bryson, after raping 2 women, was then placed in a female estate after changing gender.
A funeral for the Pogues frontman Shane MacGowan is being held in Ireland. His bandmates paid tribute a short while ago, singing The Parting Glass. Family, friends, politicians and celebrities, including Hollywood star Johnny Depp, all gathered to pay their final respects in County Tipperary. Singer Nick Cave performed A Rainy Night in Soho, and a recording of U2 frontman Bono delivering a reading was also played. His sister Siobhan and widow Victoria Mary Clark gave eulogies. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. And now it's back to Michelle.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel, a Conservative life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, and the writer and trade unionist, Paul Embry. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening, Michelle.
And you know the drill, don't you? It's not just about us three here, it's very much about you guys at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with us all the usual ways, GBViews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet me at GBNews. I've got a lot that I want to get into with you tonight. I want to talk the Tory party carnage. Continues, doesn't it? I want to talk about Ukraine. Should we be giving the Ukraine war more money? And I also want to ask you about the national anthem. Is it offensive? Honestly, and a lot more. But before I get stuck into all of that news of the day, Daniel Moylan, I heard you doing like a little, it was kind of a chortle. I hope it wasn't wind or anything, but I certainly heard you doing a sound when we was discussing, and the newsreader was discussing just then Prince Harry's legal case and the loss of that. Why?
Well, he's worried about his reputation. He's saying his reputation's been damaged. And all I'm thinking is that, well, if you want to preserve your reputation, if you're a member of the royal family and you want to preserve your reputation, you could learn from other members of the royal family, which is basically stay out of court. And that's what they've managed to do. And although, you know, regard for the royal family goes up and down a bit, generally it recovers. And as we, at the moment, we have very high regard for the royal family, the working royal family. Possibly less regard for the one member of it who keeps traipsing in and out of court.
This is my doppelganger you're talking about here. I'm offended.
This is, I know,
yes.
I know. You are, you are what Harry's going to look like in a few years.
All of this, I've never been so insulted.
The insults have begun already. It's only 8 minutes past.
All of this mental anguish that poor Harry is experiencing, and you're sticking the boot in, Daniel.
It must be great for you, though. Do you ever do any work as a lookalike? Well,
I could have done, but then he scarpered to America, didn't he? And after that...
Oh, yeah, for privacy.
The bookings dried up after that, and I'm just an ordinary GB News pundit now.
Oh, you're not
trying to scratch a living.
Oh, no. Well, if anyone wants a Prince Harry lookalike, if you're sitting there thinking, how can I make my Christmas work party extra special? There you go. He's available for bookings. I can be your agent. I'll take a small cut. We could do some deals by the end of the programme.
Bar mitzvahs.
Yes, anything, quite frankly, court cases, anything. Anyway, we'll talk about the royal family, because I want to talk to you about the national anthem, actually. University has basically said that they're not going to have the national anthem anymore at their graduations because they say it's old-fashioned and offensive to some. Give me a break. What do you think to that? We'll get on to that before the end of the programme. But for now, let's talk the Tories, shall we? Because it never seems to end, does it? My nana used to have a saying that you don't air your dirty laundry in public. And I do think there's a lot of Tories out there that could kind of heed her good advice, because there's yet another rift doing the rounds again today. It's something we touched very briefly on last night, a tweet that the Tory party had put out on their social media. Let's just have a little look. Don't worry, everyone. If you're easily offended offended. We've blared out a bit in the middle, which is the main finger. If you're listening, not watching, it is, of course, that BBC reporter that put her finger up just before you went live on air. I feel very sorry for her, you know, because, you know, we're all human and we do strange things before we go live on air. We don't sit here with, like, especially me. God, if I accidentally get switched on, I can tell you it wouldn't be pretty. But anyway, there but for the grace of God go all of us is what I say. Anyway, the Tory party put it up and said, they captioned it Labour when you ask for their plans to tackle illegal immigration. Well, a variety of different Tories have come out now publicly and criticised it and asked for this post to be taken down. I've got to say, the Tories are having none of it and have left it up. Who's writing this?
Well, what I'm really worried about is GBNews.
Why?
I mean, why have you blanked that out? I mean, I haven't seen this. That's triggered me, that blanking out, because, I mean, I can cope with a finger. Look, I've got fingers.
You have?
I'm used to fingers. I know what they do. What could that could be something other than a finger. I know what
an old English gentleman like you wouldn't like it.
That has really triggered me.
Shall I tell you why we blurred it out?
Completely wimpish in blanking that out.
Shall I tell you why?
Yeah, go on.
Right, so when you're a parent or a grandparent, for example, you spend an awful lot of time telling your kids you don't swear, you don't do this, you don't do that. And if a child, for example, was to do that, if you're a good parent, I suspect you'd be telling them off. If you then put your telly on at the tea time and a respectable news programme is displaying that for all to see while you're having your tea with your children, I've got to say, for me personally as a presenter, I don't think that's cool.
Well, it could
so
be
it's for that reason.
Children have imagination. I mean, that could be anything. It could be a sparkler, it could be a firecracker, it could be anything. It could be waving in front of your face. You know, I think you've got to be honest with people, and I think GB News is being particularly wimpish about this.
Daniel Moylan.
This is exactly the sort of attitude that finds the national anthem offensive. But we'll come back to that later.
And you were doing a very good politician's response of completely swearing the point, which is the division of the Tories, and taking me off on a tangent over there. So back to the main issue. What's going on with you lot?
The division of the Tories is the running drama, the Sopranos, the Dallas, whatever, of our modern life. And I think we've all got used to it. I mean, that and Nigel in the Jungle are the two things that people watch and it keeps them going. There is division in the Tory party. There's no doubt at all about that. And it's better that we know about it than that we don't know about it, in my view. So washing it out a bit in the public, whatever your grandmother said, is good for public debate and public information.
And that's great, but you've got a key vote on Tuesday. Yeah. So if that division doesn't sort itself out, it'll be curtains for the Tories or for Rishi Sunak. Well,
it's going to be very difficult for the Prime Minister if he is defeated on Tuesday effectively by his own party. Effectively, that would be extremely difficult for him. It's true. I mean, the bill itself is almost certain to be defeated in the Lords, and there's no way he can rescue it from the Lords.
Really? Would it be if it passed by a stonking majority?
Would it pass by a stonking majority?
But if it did, you guys wouldn't try and go against that, would you?
Yes. I wouldn't. Well,
I'm going to come back to that.
I'll vote for the bill, but there are people in the House of Lords who would certainly vote it out several times.
I want to unpack it, but before I do, I'm conscious that Paul, a.k.a. Prince Harry Lookalike, needs to be brought in. Where are you on this? And we'll unpick that last point in a sec.
Tory Civil War, great for anyone in the Labour Party to see the Tories at each other's throats in the run-up to a general election. What's not to like? And they really are at war. I mean, there is bloodletting, isn't there, in the Tory party? You've got the ERG, you've got the Liberal tendency, which is very much now dominating back behind the wheel. You've got the New Conservatives, if you like...
Common Sense Army, it's all going on.
You know, the small C social Conservatives. And I just get the sense that, I mean, the main political parties are all a broad church. Labour Party's a broad church. The Tories like to call themselves a broad church. I just wonder sometimes if, as a mainstream political party, you could be too broad a church. Some people have said that about the Labour Party over the years. I'm wondering now if it's true of the Tory party with all of these disparate groups. You know, you've got the wets, the people on the left. You've got the people on, as I said, the ERG, what some people term as the hard right, the Singapore-on-Thames crew. That was how they saw Brexit. You've got the likes of Danny Kruger involved in the New Conservatives who are saying we've got to be more rooted, we've got to talk more about the old traditional faith, flag and family, the 3Fs issues. And you just wonder if they can possibly kind of hold this together, and I'm not sure they can. And I don't think I've ever kind of thought before that the Tory party could split. And I'm not necessarily saying it's going to happen now, but you could see the ingredients are potentially there, because you find it difficult to see how these groups can possibly reconcile themselves. And it may be that a thumping election defeat may be the catalyst for some sort of split in the ranks.
So
you're in
the thick of it, literally. Is this all kind of media hype and media tittle-tattle and people desperate for content that are trying to kind of highlight things where perhaps they're not as serious and as deep divisions as they may possibly be in reality? Or is it really divided? This is your party. Do you feel it is?
Well, I actually got slightly more respect for the media than that, because many of these journalists who write about the Conservative Party and the Labour Party for a living are really quite serious people, and they wouldn't be writing about something that didn't have some substance to it. They wouldn't just be inventing stuff. So I think you have to accept that there are real differences, and they're brought to the fore by hard decisions. It's when you have to make a decision that you find you fall out. And there are hard decisions facing the country about immigration. There are hard decisions facing the country about net zero. There are hard decisions facing the country about the economy and what's the best way of promoting the economy and making us all more prosperous, which everybody wants to do, but there are disagreements about the best way of doing it. Labour has the luxury of not having to have any policies on this at the moment, which is fair dues. They'll have to have a manifesto at some stage, but opposition parties are not put under the same spotlight as a governing party is. But at the moment, these decisions are coming thick and fast towards the government, and they are causing divisions and disagreements. That's in a way not surprising, but as Paul says, the question is whether you can actually reconcile them and patch them over and keep the show on the road, which most political parties manage to do over a period, even when they disagree. I mean, just think back 2 weeks and the splits in the Labour Party over Gaza. The whole party was falling apart over Gaza.
It was?
Yeah, but I don't think that impacts on voters. I don't think voters necessarily care about splits when it comes to foreign policy issues, because they think, well, OK, the Labour Party was sort of fighting amongst itself a little bit, but how does that impact on me as an ordinary voter in a cost of living crisis, struggling to pay my mortgage and so on? Whereas I think immigration, being a touchstone issue at the moment in the body politic in Britain, really is an issue on the doorstep. And if the party is at war on that, and if you've got a large element of the party which is seen, rightly or wrongly, to be trying to stop the government from dealing with the issue, then I think voters do think, well, actually, you've probably forfeited the right to govern, because if you are at each other's throats over something that is a central issue and will be a central issue in the general election, you can't get your own house in order on it. Why should we trust you to govern the country? And I have to say, I think, truth is, Daniel, I think the Tories have forfeited the right to govern.
Well,
I think all bad governments get to a point where the trust has been abused so much and they let down the voters so much. I sense now that people are thinking, look, you've forfeited the right to govern us. You've had all these sort of changes of Prime Minister. You've been constantly involved in this civil war for the last few years. You haven't delivered on your mandate in 2019. It's over. Go.
Well, there you go. Let's throw that out to you guys at home then. Do you feel the way that Paul Embry is suggesting that voters feel? Are you one of those people that sit there as well and chant general election now? Is that what you want to see happen? What do you think as well as that suggestion from, I think it was Lord Frost, about potentially replacing Rishi Sunak? I mean, surely we don't need another Prime Minister, do we? Anyway, keep your thoughts coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com is how you reach me. Next up, I want to talk to you about the war in Ukraine over in the States. They've currently blocked a military aid package for that war. Some people are saying that perhaps the UK could step up, increase our spending on that war. Do you think we should? You tell me. I'll see you in 2.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's on your teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Conservative life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, and the writer and trade unionist Paul Embry alongside me. I do love you guys at home already. I've not even asked for it yet. Already, you're emailing in your pictures of your Christmas trees. I just saw yours, Ruth and Julian. They're in Alicante. They've just sent me theirs. I'm going to try and get some loaded up into the system, and we can do a little Christmas share at some point before the end of the programme. That's nice, isn't it? Bring up a little bit of Christmas cheer into the programme. So much bad stuff goes on in this world, doesn't it? It's nice to just share a little bit of niceness. One of my viewers says, thank you, Michelle, for blaring out that finger. We really do appreciate it. There you go, Lord Moylan. Some people, I mean, standards and decency in society, they are plummeting, but luckily, by my fingertips, I'm trying to pull them up. Let's talk, shall we? Ukraine. I have to say, that does seem to get overshadowed a little bit at the moment, doesn't it, given the horrific situation when it comes to the goings-on in Gaza. But notwithstanding that, David Cameron, Lord Cameron, should I say, has said that if the United States doesn't keep funding Ukraine, it could be a Christmas present to Vladimir Putin. Now, this is all about the fact that currently an aid package that was planned to go from the States into places like Ukraine, I mean, Ukraine was set to get something like $61 billion in that package. Well, it's currently been blocked. Let me come to you on this. I mean, there's a few people saying, well, actually, the UK could step up, help fund, further fund Ukraine and all the rest of it. Do you think that's what we should be doing?
Well, I think we should be absolutely clear that Putin's assault on Ukraine is an attack on all of us. And if Putin succeeds, then our own defences here in Britain are seriously compromised, because he will have taken a step through violence into annexing part of Europe which doesn't belong to him. And he is an immediate and imminent threat to parts of what we call the West, especially in the Baltic states. And it is going to put NATO under huge strain. This package is still supported by the US government, as far as I know. It's held up in Congress because it's tied up with American domestic politics. It may yet be released.
It's to do with, like, immigration. What they're saying is there wasn't enough kind of immigration bits and bobs attached to that. It's
tied up in American politics. Immigration is the story everywhere domestically, but Ukraine shouldn't be forgotten as a major foreign story, because it has real implications for us here. So I'm entirely with Lord Cameron in saying that we should do everything we can. We can't provide aid on the scale that the United States can, obviously. But then what is the European Union doing? They are doing a lot, it's true, but if people need to step up, it needs to be the whole of the European Union and NATO in Europe, and not just the United Kingdom.
Clear, before I bring Paul in, when you say we should do everything we can, I mean, would you ever advocate British boots being on the ground? Not for training purposes, but I mean for fighting purposes there.
At the moment, I think that would be a step too far, but it might actually have to... At some point, you know, those Russian boots are going to be really threatening us and our allies, allies that we're bound to by treaty. Allies that if they're attacked, we will have to go to war.
Who? Which allies? Who?
Estonia, for example, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland. Those countries are tied to us through NATO by treaty.
Yeah.
So that if they are attacked by Russia, we go to war.
Daniel, that's not going to happen.
And you say it's not going to happen.
Russia is not... I mean, Putin is a tyrant, no question about it, but he's not completely stupid that he's going to invade a NATO country.
Everyone said that about Ukraine.
He will know that
everyone said exactly that about Ukraine.
But Ukraine's not NATO, is it?
No, but everyone said exactly that about Ukraine. He's not stupid.
It was a different proposition, and he knew that there wouldn't be NATO boots on the ground in Ukraine. He probably knew that, you know, the US, Britain, the EU would arm and fund Ukraine, but he knew there wouldn't be boots on the ground. Something like going into Estonia or somewhere, that's a different proposition entirely, and you know, there's no way, I think, in reality, he would take that step when he knows that it would provoke NATO. They would have to invoke the collective defence article.
What is it, Article 5 or something?
Yeah, and then basically you're into World War III. But the truth is,
this is exactly what people said, but a lot of people said about Hitler, of course. And this is exactly the sort of talk that got complacency, that got us into the situation.
But don't you think there's any logic to what he's saying?
Hold on.
Of course, there's some logic to it. Of course, it's a different step.
Let's not go comparing Putin and Hitler in terms of their aspirations. You can compare them in terms of being tyrants, certainly, I'll go with you on that. But in terms of their aspirations, I think the idea that Putin wants to march through most of Europe like Hitler did and, you know, create some sort of greater Russian Empire. He occasionally gets accused of that. But actually, when you see the way they've been bogged down in Ukraine for nearly 2 years, the idea that they're going to advance across, you know, some sort of blitzkrieg across Europe in the way that Hitler did, and, you know, destroy, as Hitler did, you know, invaded the Low Countries and France and so on, is just completely fanciful. That isn't Putin's intention. Let's be honest.
Again, you see, take the historical comparison. We didn't know Hitler's intentions in the 1930s. He never said, I'm going to march all the way across Europe. He said, oh, I just want a little bit of Czechoslovakia, I want a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We didn't know his intention.
I think some people were alive to it.
Some people thought they knew, and they were alive to it, but the majority of people in the government didn't know his intentions, just the same way you're talking about Putin now. We don't know what Putin intends. We do know that he is a threat. We know that if Putin succeeds in this threat, then he will be more powerful in threatening something against his immediate, what would then be already his immediate neighbours in the Baltic states, in Moldavia, which is not part of NATO, in Romania, which is next door, which is, and he's already threatening Moldova as it's called, and so on. So I think, you know, you're being very, very complacent about this. This is a real threat. His move is a threat to us.
Daniel, the war in Ukraine...
We can't detach ourselves from that. We are committed to it.
The war in Ukraine,
the
war in Ukraine had a particular set of circumstances. Now, I don't defend the invasion at all. I think it was absolutely wrong. But there was a historical set of circumstances. You've got ethnic Russian people in the east, in the Donbass, who lots of Russians feel were being mistreated. They feel that NATO was advancing eastward, that it was courting Ukraine, that it was going right up to the Russian border, that it was therefore a threat to Russia. Because we all know that NATO was created, as you know, as an explicitly anti-Soviet institution, and many people in Russia still see it as an anti-Russian institution. It was not brought about, we can condemn the invasion and we should, but it was not brought about by, in my view, imperial ambitions in the way that Hitler had. And I think if we see it in those terms, we do ourselves a disservice. And actually, we end up ratcheting it up.
We do know, actually, because he wrote an essay about it, that and published it in advance, a long essay, in which Putin made it very clear that he did have imperial ambitions, which stretched as far as Ukraine and Belarus, which he regards as being part of Greater Russia, and it should all be one state. That's absolutely, I know that, but it's absolutely clear. What you don't know is what the next essay is going to say.
But the bigger picture is that, you know, and I regret to say it, but Ukraine is not going to win this war. And even some people who were very, very fulsome in their support of Ukraine, I think are reconciling themselves to the fact that Ukraine is now bogged down. The counter-offensive it launched a few months ago clearly hasn't worked. They're burning through manpower and equipment faster than they can replace them. And you get to a point where you have to say, look, we are probably going to have to cut our losses, because Ukraine, I don't think now, and I think it's becoming more and more widely accepted, even among military chiefs, they are not going to win. So what they need to do is sue for peace, and peace in a way that maintains the territorial integrity of Ukraine, but at the same time giving some sort of autonomy to the ethnic Russians in the east, which were what the Minsk Accords were built around.
Yeah, they had a peace deal. They had a peace deal.
Well,
why would you ever trust the Russians in the next peace deal?
Well, hold on a second. I don't.
Why?
I don't think it's necessarily that straight. You're saying that the Russians collapsed the peace deal.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't.
Well, there were Minsk Accords.
The Minsk Accords. I don't accept that was entirely the fault of the Russians for collapsing it. And I think actually that can form the basis of a new settlement. The problem is Ukraine now has got less bargaining power because it is so bogged down and the counter-offensive has failed. That those people, and they were few, and they were too few, who were saying very early in this conflict, look, we need to find some sort of peaceful settlement here, were, with hindsight, probably right, because I think had that been the case, then Ukraine could have sued on terms that were actually better than the terms it may end up likely to be suing on in the next few weeks or months. And that ultimately is the tragedy. And the people who have to bear responsibility for that, I think, are the people who have not looked for peace throughout the whole of the 2 years of this war. I've been struck by how there's been an absence of international voices across politics, across the religious world, people of influence who have said, look, you know, we need to find a peaceful way out of this. They do that for any other war, but it seems to me when it came to Russia and Ukraine, there were far too many people egging it on and too few people who were saying, like, how can we broker a peaceful settlement? And we're now paying the price for that, I think.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because we have pretty much every weekend now, don't we? We have those marches and stuff about ceasefires now when it comes to things like Gaza. But Ukraine, where are all the people that are out on the streets calling for ceasefire there and peace there, etc.? You guys are divided on this one, to put it mildly, I can tell you. Susan says, Paul is completely wrong. Putin is an evil man who hates the West. Daniel is completely right. Who's this one here says, Stuart says, I don't normally agree with Paul on anything at all, but he is 100% correct when he's speaking about the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Simon says, Putin wants to recreate the USSR and bring all those countries back into his sphere of operation. We must never allow him to believe that we would sit by and do nothing to prevent that. I mean, are there any limits? I mean, we've just been talking about boots on the ground. We're talking about money, additional money. You know, if everyone is in support of this, are there any limits at all, any red lines at all or not? I think David Cameron, I think he did actually say that his red line would be that kind of notion about potential boots on the ground. Is that one of yours or not? And if it's money, if you're all for more money, is there a line there or not? Is it just an open checkbook in your mind? Get in touch. Let me know your thoughts on that. gbviews@gbnews.com. After the break, let me ask you something. Is the national anthem offensive? Is it outdated? You tell me, because one particular university seems to think so. See you in 2.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, the Tory life peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan, and the Rights and Trade Unionist, Paul Embry. Very bad news, I'm afraid, dear listeners and viewers, because I need to draw close to the Christmas tree viewings because I've squeezed as many as I can into my system and I'm going to be showing them before the end of the programme. But you're loving it. I've got more Christmas trees than I can shake a stick at, so I'll keep rolling them over and we'll do it again next week. But for now, I want to talk to you about the National Anthem because, get this, everyone, Bristol University, they've axed it now from their graduation ceremonies because some students see it as, I quote, old-fashioned, and I also quote, offensive to some. I find that absolutely pathetic. Paul Embry, where are you on that?
Well, George Orwell said that England is the only great country whose intellectuals are ashamed of their nationality. And I think, to be honest, our universities are proving the point. I mean, they are, let's be blunt, they're sort of hotbeds these days of a sort of liberal, progressive culture. That kind of rouse against any small c conservative expression of you know, patriotism, affinity for country, affection for country and stuff like that. So I think that this is a symbol of that mindset, of that worldview. And, you know, it's appalling, really, because I'm not a jingoist, by the way. I don't like the idea of kids going in like they do in America and saluting the flag and singing the national anthem every morning and stuff like that. But I think on a special occasion such as this, it's not a lot to ask to say that if the national anthem's being played, why would you want to ban it? And we seem to be the only country that does this sort of nonsense. Can you imagine in France, a university banning Le Marseillaise at a graduation ceremony? It just wouldn't happen. And I think it shows the kind of pitiful state of our seats of learning at the moment, I'm sad to say.
Daniel?
It's interesting that it's Bristol again, isn't it? I mean, I actually think Bristol is going to leave the United Kingdom and just float out somewhere into the middle of the Celtic Sea.
Is that your wish?
St George's Channel, and it'll be, you know, it'll be closing itself down as part of the United Kingdom altogether. Something about Bristol, it's gone completely bonkers. Paul's absolutely right. I mean, but I would ask people, you know, I'd ask the University of Bristol, what about the people who find it offensive that you don't play the national anthem? What consideration did you give to them and to their views?
I wonder which would be the majority. Do you think the majority would be people that find it offensive or majority that people that don't?
In Bristol, you've no idea. In Bristol, you couldn't tell. But in the country at large, the majority of people do not find the national anthem offensive. It is old. The words go back and the music go back to the sort of the 18th century. We've already dropped one verse of it because it was too offensive. We thought, I don't think it's too offensive. But the one about, you know, about the king's enemies and frustrate their politics,
and
frustrate their neighbours.
It was a bit about crushing the Scots, which I think should be brought back in,
which was
personally.
meant to be something. I don't know whether it doesn't explicitly refer to the Scots.
Yeah, everyone knows that's who we were talking about.
Well, you know, whatever. We've already dropped that one. So, I mean, how much more of it do we have to drop? We're just left with... We just hum. We could hum the national anthem, maybe, and they'd allow us to do that. How about that? A humming song.
Go on, then. Just give us a quick... I'm going to make him do the whole thing. I'm going to go out to the toilet or something and leave him humming. Let me just bring bring some of my viewers in, right? Because Jackie says, Michelle, I think this is just a step towards people trying to remove the national anthem. And if people can't see that, we've got an even bigger problem, she says. Who's this? Dell, I think it is. It's not outdated. It should be kept. There's too many people in this country trying to take away our identity. Paul says, Michelle, the national anthem is way out of date and it's not fit for purpose. Why should we, he says, why should we be subjects and sing to save one person? It doesn't make any sense. We need a national anthem which is about the nation and not one individual.
Well, England should certainly have its own national anthem. That is a lacuna, the fact that the three other home countries have got national anthems and we don't. In England, we don't have. We should have our own national anthem, something like Jerusalem. I'd be in favour of that, but keeping God Save the King as the kind of default for the UK.
Peter says the national anthem is offensive and outdated. He says, I get tingles listening to the Scottish, Irish and Welsh anthems. He says, when they play God Save the King here, though, it makes me angry and it's time for a change, in my opinion. Brian says, well, as a Republican, I think we should have a more uplifting song, perhaps Land of Hope and Glory or something, instead of something paying homage to one person. So I find that quite interesting.
If you look at the words of
debate.
Land of Hope and Glory, they're probably a great deal more offensive to modern sensibilities than anything in God Save the King.
Anne, she makes a good point, and she's quite right, because she says, Michelle, I've heard that they will play it if there's a member of the royal family visiting, which is absolutely right. That is what they've said. She says, talk about flexible principles, and I do think that is quite interesting. I think you make an interesting point. Maz says, Michelle, I've wanted a different anthem for years. This one should have been faded out with the Empire. See, they're very divided. The national anthem is way past its by date, is outdated and utterly irrelevant, says Stuart, in brackets, another one. Another Stuart, yes. How many Stuarts have we got?
Well, they're the Scots, you see.
Well,
Stuart's a Scottish
rising up.
You've been hacked by Scott.
Have I? We were talking about the Russians hacking the politicians last night, and I was saying, can you imagine if the Russians have indeed been hacking our politicians? They'd probably become so confused and bewildered by what on earth was going on.
They'd probably realise they've really got nothing to fear, wouldn't they, if they were listening to the private messages of our politicians? Look,
John, he's not a man that minces his words. He says, leave our national anthem alone, and if anyone finds it offensive, clear off. That's what he says. There you go. I want to talk to you after the break. I've got a simple question to ask you. Christmas season coming up, lots of family rifts and stuff like that. How forgiving are you? And don't worry, I'll also be showing you some Christmas trees, and I've got an absolute corker of something that I want to show you that will definitely put a smile on your face in time for the weekend. See you in 2.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. There's only three. Join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Lord Moylan and Paul Embry remain alongside me. You know the drill on Friday on Dewbs & Co. Dewberry Tavern is open, where we say a small cheers at the start of the weekend. So cheers, and cheers to you guys as well at home. Patricia has been in touch with him. Can I just say, Michelle is so rude at the start of her show. Shame on you. I've got to say, I don't actually know what I did at the start of my show that was so offensive, but whatever it was, it certainly wouldn't have been intentional.
Didn't give the finger, did you? Like the
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
That was off camera, wasn't it?
Yeah, Peter said the national anthem should be sung by all pupils at the start of every school day. David says, you're all missing a key point. If you don't believe in God, then the national anthem is an absolute non-starter. Is that true? You've got to believe in God?
No.
Someone else has just said, Michelle, the answer to this is very simple. Get Sam Smith in to record an alternative. That will please people. Yeah. I'll let you guys be the judge of that, shall I? Look, we're in the Christmas, we're on the approach to Christmas, aren't we? There's a few things I want to get through before the end of my programme. I want to ask you, how forgiving are you? I'll tell you why I'm asking that in a second. And also, I have got an absolute corker to play you before the end of the programme, and I guarantee it will put a smile on your face. Well, maybe not one of my panellists, but it certainly will mine and hopefully yours too. Anyway, look, let me share some of your Christmas trees, because you lovely people have been inundating me with them tonight. Let's have a little look at this. Get this one up. Oh, yes, this is Ruth. I think this was one, she's in Alicante. I'm sure it was Ruth and Julian, I think it was, on the top of my head. I like it. Very nice. Let's have a look at the next one. Matt and Jen. Oh, look at that tree. And look at that lady there on the telly.
Yeah, very smart.
Yeah, well, where are her companions?
Where's the code? They've edited you out.
I was looking at the tree.
Yeah, no, they've cut you out, you two.
In fact, your image should be on top of the tree.
On the Angel of the North, plonked on the top. Let's have a look at the next one. Who's this? Oh, look at this. This is Andy's tree, and he's got his 2 dogs there, Frank and Fleur.
There's a couple of big baubles.
I like
down
it.
There.
Yes, there is. I like that. I like it. Let's have a look. Next one, Jane's tree. Oh, another dog. That's quite a nice... Is that a slimline tree or is it the angle? It looks slimline to me. I like it. And I'm at last... Oh, look at this one, Paul. If you're listening, not watching, I think that's gone... Is that a white tree or is it just covered in fake snow? I'm looking at a very small... Tinsel. I like it. I like it, Paul. And last but not least... Oh, look at this one. This is Barry and Dawn's tree. There's a lot of coordination going on in this picture. The curtains, the chair, the cushion and the tree. There's like a theme going on.
Yeah,
I like it.
That's impressive.
That is impressive.
A lot of effort went into that, you can tell.
That is very impressive. Right. I want to ask you a question, ladies and gents, and bear with me. It might sound a bit random, but I think it's... I'm going somewhere, I think. I saw... this week, it was probably one of the most distressing things I remember watching, and it was awful. It was a family whose little boy had been killed in a hit and run, and the family were appealing for the driver of this car, basically, to hand themselves in. And something really struck me, because they turned around and they said, look, our little boy was incredibly forgiving, and we, as his parents, have already forgiven you, the driver of this car, but we just want justice to be done. And it got me thinking, it really touched me, because I was like, wow, that must take something, there's something in you to be that forgiving in that scenario. And then it got me thinking about Christmas. So many families, you know, they've had big family rifts and people don't forgive and forget and move on, and you get all divided families, and Christmas is a time of kind of coming together. So I just thought I'd be nosy and ask, how forgiving are my viewers? How forgiving are you, Paul?
I think it depends on the extent of how much I've been wronged and what the person did. I can forgive in certain circumstances, but for me, you have to be repentant first. If you don't show repentance, if you don't seek forgiveness, then the forgiveness becomes meaningless, I think. You have to show remorse.
Daniel, are you a forgiving kind of guy?
I think, well, let me just say, I think this poor, tragic family have put their finger on a really important distinction, which is the distinction between forgiveness and justice, because they're willing to forgive the person who did this. That is one thing. But they still want justice to be done. Forgiveness is, if you like, an act of charity. But justice requires someone to face the music and pay recompense and punishment and whatever it is. And it's a really important distinction. But the biggest problem families have is anger. And anger is something that they get angry and then they nurture the anger, sometimes for years. And Christmas is quite a good time, I think, to let that go.
When I heard a saying once, which was getting angry at someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. And that's always stuck with me, that actually, because it is difficult to kind of, I don't know, just smooth things over and be the bigger person sometimes. And, you know, we do internalise things, don't we? But actually, when I heard that, it did make me stop in my tracks.
It's also a release valve, isn't it? Anger is a natural, justified release valve.
It is.
A burst of anger, but nurturing it forever, it does you no good. Michelle's right, it's a poison.
Yeah, lots of people appreciating Malcolm said, can I just say what a great show tonight. I've enjoyed the topics and I've enjoyed the stories. Can you say thanks to your panel from me? Lots of you still getting your Christmas trees in. I'm going to try and carry some of those over. But look, ladies and gents, I told you I wanted to share something that really, really made me smile today. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. We talked about this at the start of that programme. Shane McGowan, of course, it was his funeral just taken place over in Ireland. Listen to this. It was a celebration of his life, and this was a particularly beautiful moment. Look. Oh, you see, don't you just love that? Don't you just love it? I absolutely love that. That put such a smile on my face. It made me really happy. Paul, you were singing along, your toes were tapping. What an amazing moment. I love Fairy Tale of New York. For me, that is Christmas. That is my Christmas song. My family love it. We always belt it out. Really, Shane McGowan's gone. Kirsty MacColl, the female lead singer of that song, obviously died young in a tragic accident. That was, you know, that was really sad. But I don't normally like that sort of thing in church, but I'll let that one pass because that was a magical performance. And all real Grinch there. What's the matter with you? You weren't getting into it.
No, I wasn't really into it, no.
Why?
But I'd never heard the song before, actually.
Yeah, Daniel.
You haven't lived.
But I will just say this. I do know Tipperary, and they will not have seen anything like this for a very long time.
Oh, you know what? I think it was absolutely incredible. I think they really did put on a fantastic celebration of life, and I do hope Shane, of course, rests in peace. But for now, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Daniel. I'm going to start calling you the Christmas Grinch now. It wasn't even tapping his toes, everybody. Anyway, listen, I've really enjoyed your company at home. Have a fantastic night. Lee Anderson, up next. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. There'll be heavy rain for many areas of the country throughout Saturday. It'll turn quite windy through the afternoon, but there'll also be some sunshine later on and some drier interludes as the weekend progresses. Throughout the course of the night, we'll be between weather fronts. That means there will be some dry weather around, particularly for central areas, the Midlands, parts of East Anglia as well, seeing some good dry, clear spells throughout the night. That dry weather then will